Okay, so really quick, I wanted to do a shoot. I did the Rotolights, not just the Neos, but the Aeos too, and the strobes. So I want to show you the pros and cons and the side that no YouTuber ever shows you. All the mistakes you make using an LED versus a strobe. Now, don't get me wrong, I love using these. These are wonderful little lights. This is the Neo 3 Pro, and I had the Aeos 2, not the Pro version, versus these DP1000s, which I got, very inexpensively. Now these 1,000 watt units, even at full price, I think they're 450 or 490 or something like that. They're cheaper than even the little Rotolight, even just the straight or the Neo. These are cheaper. And, I showed you what these can do in an umbrella with a diffuser. And you have gorgeous, gorgeous light with them. Now, I like to play with the Neos, and they do put out nice light, but you really have to be in the moment and shooting and paying attention, because if I want to get ISO 200, which was my goal with the Rotolights, and capture the images the way I wanted to, I went down to 1/25th of a second. I think it was at f2.8. And the issues that you have, motion blur and, you'll see depth of field and so forth. And at the very end, I switched to the DP1000s, the strobes, so you can see the difference and see, from one to the next. But I'll get right into the shoot so you can see it. I'm going to show you all my mistakes and all the mistakes that most people have with using LEDs, and we'll go from there. Anyway, enjoy the shoot. If you have any questions, leave them below as always, and thanks for watching.
So first thing he wanted to do is he wanted to show him making margaritas, because he's really good at making margaritas. We had a mishap, but it was kind of funny, so I left it in. Anyway, with LEDs, you're not getting depth of field. So I'm sharp on him, everything's great, but then the product is soft. So if I wanted to get that depth of field, I'd have to go down to f8, and, my high ISOs are going to go off the charts. Now, these photos are straight out of camera, so just so you know, I didn't do anything with them. Here goes the mishap. There was a lot of lime juice just dumped all over. But it's the first time my floor has been clean. I can't tell you how long, so that was a positive thing. Anyway, but, for commercial type shoots, if you're going to do a commercial type shoot, and this is just for fun, obviously. But these kind of shots, you're like, oh, well, this is great. The shaker is going to be blurry, which is great because it's showing motion. But even with the shaker moving as much as is, look at his face. That's motion blur. It's not out of focus. That is actual motion blur. He's, dead on focus. But that little bit of movement that he was given is going to give motion blur. Now you think, okay, well, these are stand-up shots, so this shouldn't be an issue. And now, I am 1/25th of a second because I wanted that lower ISO, because I want a sharp image, or a less noisy image, if you will. But you can see here, that's motion blur. And, and granted, not all my shots have motion blur in them. The ones where I'm not paying attention or just trying to grab something while and you see that little movement he gives when he smiles. He does it all the time. That's not sharp. That's motion blur. So these are the issues with LEDs. And especially if you have somebody that has as much animation as he does. He's constantly talking. When he smiles, he moves his head into the smile, to add more to it. This one's sharp. But now here's sitting. So you'd think, okay, well, this would be less likely to have motion blur because he's actually sitting. It's holding him still. But you can see his body movement now. He's constantly active, constantly moving. So you try to get that non-moving shot. But then if he smiles, he's got some head movement, and there it is again. Looks sharp, but it's really not. It has motion blur in it. Now, the other hand of this is like, if you are shooting two people or need that depth of field, which one are you going to choose to be in focus, or you're going to raise the ISO? And now she's in focus, he's in focus, but he has motion blur again because of the LEDs. I just gave a really quick clip of this. It's a solid shot, no issues. There's motion blur. That's not tack sharp. So, and I'm not showing you the good ones. I'm just showing you the bad ones, not to make me look bad, but just to show the obvious. This stuff happens. And a lot of people look at their stuff and go, oh, I'm out of focus, I'm out of focus. It's not, it's motion blur. So you really have to look out for that. And, whether it's the model moving or you moving when you're, squeezing the shutter, that old adage, like it goes way, way back, make sure you squeeze the shutter, don't push the shutter button. And it's still true to this day. But yeah, we got some sharp ones like this one, and they're solid when they're solid. And I love the lights and the working of the lights, but here I switched over to the strobes. So I have two strobes. I'm using the two Neos in the back just for some light for the video, nothing else. It's not going to give him any light. But you can see no matter what he does, no matter what kind of movement he makes, you can see him moving in each shot here. The shot's going to be solid. It's going to be sharp. It's going to be in focus. There's no motion blur because the strobes stop motion. You're not using the camera shutter anymore. Even though it's 1/80th, if he was moving, you'd still have motion blur, even at 1/80th of a second. With strobes, they'll stop him in his tracks. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the shoot. Ask below if you have any questions.